This is Jeffrey Reddick, and you're listening to The Break It Down Show.
And now, The Break It Down Show with Jon and Pete.
Yes, you are. And with us today, we have the honor and the pleasure of Jeffrey Reddick in the house.
In the house, indeed.
The house happens to be Hill's house. We're in the office of Hilliard Guess, who hosts the Screenwriters Rant Room in this very room. So we better make a good show, because good shows get made at this table.
That's what happens.
Yeah.
No
thank you for, really.
No pressure.
Thanks for joining us.
No, thanks for having me.
I think the first thing I want to say is, since you're from Kentucky, we are mourning the loss of Muhammad Ali this week.
Yeah.
Now, you grew up in Kentucky?
I grew up in Kentucky, and the funny thing is, I did not realize that he was from Kentucky till he passed.
No kidding.
I
missed that one.
I missed that one.
Wow.
Yeah, because I grew up like in eastern Kentucky, very, very small town. And
What's the name of the town in eastern Kentucky?
It's Jackson.
Okay.
Jackson, Kentucky. Actually, I grew up in a little subsection called Athol, which was like probably a 20-minute drive from Jackson, but that was the city I grew up in. So I just never, like when we first moved there, we finally got TV with like 3 channels. HBO was a big deal, but if it ever snowed and knocked over the cable, then we had no TV for like a week. So Muhammad Ali was a little before my time. I was very young then. So I didn't know he was from Kentucky till he passed, and I was like, wow,
man.
There's a lot of great people come from Kentucky, but he's just was such a inspiration and such a activist and such a peaceful person for being a boxer. Again, just another. I think he did Kentucky proud, and he just was a great man. Yeah, it was.
I would say he did Kentucky proud, indeed. Yeah. I would say you have too.
Okay.
I know we'll embarrass you a little bit.
No, I try. I love Kentucky. I love being from there. And I always joke that, when people are like, oh, you're a celebrity. I'm like, well, I'm a celebrity in horror conventions and in Kentucky. Because
one could do a lot worse.
No, absolutely. No, I work in a genre that I love. And, I was funny. I was reading a Twitter post from a friend of mine, Nicole Crux, today, and she was, talking about how much movies that horror films make, but we get no respect come award season or anything like that. So it's always funny because I just love the genre, and it's something that I want to stay in. But you do get a little annoyed after a while, where it's like people kind of still look down on it when it's like it's the most profitable genre, and there's some really great films that come out of the genre.
Well, it's a type of storytelling that we know that is universal. I mean, we were talking earlier about how comedy doesn't necessarily translate in some cultures. Right. What's funny here might not be funny in other places. But what scares the shit out of you here will scare the shit out of anybody.
That's true.
And that's one thing that, we can all relate to. And I think the goodness of the horror genre, and for our listeners, if you're just joining and you haven't made yourself familiar with Jeffrey Reddick, you are perhaps best known as the creator of the Final Destination series. You wrote the first one and exec produced the second one.
Yeah, I wrote the original draft of the first one, and director James Wong and Glenn Morgan co-wrote it with me as well. So I always like to give them props. But yeah, that's my claim to fame is creating that, and I've done some other genre films as well. A movie called Tamra, a remake of Day of the Dead, which everybody loves remakes. That was sarcasm a little bit because people hate remakes. I've got I just finished a project about sleep paralysis that I wrote in Texas, and we're about to cast another horror film, and I'm going to hopefully be directing something by the end of the year. So
staying busy.
Yeah, no, it's been this year has been like a very blessed year. It's been very, very, very good so far.
We see a lot of remakes in horror. Why do you think that is?
You know what? I worked at a studio. I worked at New Line Cinema for over 10 years.
Oh, we'll get back to that.
Okay.
That's a great story.
I love New Line. What New Line used to be, it was like a maverick. Talking about mavericks in the industry. The old New Line was definitely a maverick in the industry. And I forgot what your question was now. I'm thinking about New Line. I miss it so much.
You mentioned that people don't like remakes.
Oh,
but it seems like we see them in horror.
Well, we see them because studios are very risk averse. Mm-hmm. So most studios, it's like if something has brand recognition, it's a safer bet. So that's why you see a lot of movies you see a lot of, especially out of the studios, you see a lot of sequels and remakes or things that are adapted from books or video games. It's because their rationale is that there's a built-in audience.
Yeah.
And it's a safer bet.
There are enough people who will come back for more of this if the first one was good. So what about the Vince Vaughn Psycho? Did that make money?
I don't think that one made much money.
Yeah, I don't think that one did especially well either.
That was, but there, it's always it's an interesting thing because fortunately now there's so many other places that you can get your movies out there that you don't have to necessarily go the studio route anymore. The studio route's still a great route to go, but it's, again, if you look at their output,
their tendencies,
most of their stuff is really, tentpole kind of franchise sequel stuff.
Right. They make the accountants happy.
Yeah, and it's, and I understand it's a business, but it is funny when people are bemoaning the fact that people aren't writing original stuff. It's like, well, why'd you have to write a remake? Why can't you write something original? It's like, well, I've got like 15 original scripts.
And brother got to make rent.
Yeah. That too. But yeah.
So sometimes that has to happen.
But almost all my writer friends, like we all have original material. But it's really hard to sell it. It was hard to, even working at New Line, it was originally hard to get them to sign off on Final Destination because it was death was a killer. And they're like, how can we, you can't fight it. How's that going to work? Luckily, when the director came on, they really fought to make sure that we didn't turn it into like a killer. And we kept it death. And I knew it would work because we're all afraid of death. And,
right.
You don't have to have, sometimes you don't have to have a physical killer. Like supernatural movies oftentimes don't have a physical killer.
Right.
There's nothing we're all more afraid of than death.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, the Steven Spielberg thing where he does I'm going to make something really scary and it's going to be big and ominous and it might be a shark or it might be a truck or it might be a dinosaur or whatever. Mm-hmm. But ultimately what it is a representation of your life going away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you just went for the raw, hey, we don't have to make it a shark or a truck or we can make it death. Death will come and get you.
Right. If you you can't cheat it.
Yeah.
And so that's what, I think that's why the franchise has been so durable is it does, because we never did have like a Grim Reaper kind of figure.
Right.
So that the movie traveled internationally because we didn't put any face to death. So in every country, they could just put their own fear of what death is onto that movie.
Wow.
So I think that's really why it has legs. And it's very interesting because they've done 5 of them and it's been many years since the sequel's been done, but probably in the last like 3 or 4 months, articles are like cropping up on all these websites, talking about it, either kind of doing retrospectives on it or saying it's like, this is not me saying it. This is an article saying it. Like it's an article on one of the movie sites, Movie Pilot, said it was like the best horror film of the 21st century or the 20th century. I get my centuries confused. I know Buck. It's not Buck Rogers. I don't know which century. But so it's definitely it's a film that, just as a fan, because I've been a fan of horror films my whole life, I'm very proud of it just because I know that it's kind of made a mark, and that's no kind of thing like, oh, it's the best horror film ever made, but you always want to, if you're a horror fan, you want to have a film out there that people remember. And so
sure,
I don't want to be milking Final Destination for the rest of my life. And luckily there's some other stuff coming up now that I think is going to make people very excited. But if I were to get hit by a bus today, I am happy that I kind of created something that
endures,
that
everybody enjoyed so much. Yeah.
You've got an actual franchise. What I love about the horror genre is it's fun. Your movie is fun. You're like, where is it coming from? What's going to happen?
And you can't cheat death, but you can think you can.
Yeah.
And for a little while. That's what's playful about it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. And you can be ridiculous and we'll all make that leap.
Yeah.
Because it's death. And death isn't bound by the rules that a regular character would be. Like when Jason gets up for the 5,000th time, you're like, all right, let's do it again. Let's jump again, but
death will keep getting up.
Yeah. Death's like, I don't care. It's sort of like the Terminator. He's like, I'm just going to keep coming. Yeah. And you can accept that.
Yeah.
So it's cool. I think I just watched, to do prep, I watched the first one again and it was awesome. I knew that, I knew Stifler was going to die and I'm like, I don't care. I want to see it happen. It's so crazy. It's funny. You're like looking around. They're all trying to figure it out and all of a sudden, boom, it got figured out right in front of their face. I love it.
Yeah.
Can we talk about how you landed at New Line? Cause that's such a great story.
Yeah, I I feel like I should bring out a pipe and sit back in my rocking chair to tell the tale.
That'd be a good look.
Been told many times. But when I was 14 years old, I saw the original Nightmare on Elm Street movie, which is still my favorite movie of all time. And for all the reasons I love movies, it was smartly written, had a very strong female protagonist, had a great villain, just nightmarish stuff I'd never seen before. And especially at 14, that's what messes your mind. So I went home and I wrote a prequel, and I found out the name of the studio from the video box because I saw it at a second tier theater, like right before it went to video. And I called information and got the address. And so I mailed my prequel to Bob Shea.
This story involves calling information.
I'd have popcorn.
Yeah.
I typed it also on onion paper on my typewriter.
Wow.
And never kept a copy of it because you never when you're that young, you don't think. Like now I'm like, wow, I should have kept that. Like I could sell that shit on eBay.
Yeah.
But no, so I sent it to Bob Shea, and he wrote me back a kind of a generic, we don't take unsolicited material letter.
Now, did he ever see anything at that point, or did somebody write you back and it never made it to Bob Shea's desk?
I ended up becoming friends with Bob and dear friends with his assistant Joy Mann, who amazing woman. She's no longer with us, but she took me under her wings early on and got me my first internship at New Line, and I just so blessed to know her. But she probably actually wrote me back the first time, saying we don't take unsolicited material because and Bob signed the letter, but also New Line was very small back then. This was Nightmare was their big movie. So they hadn't turned into like this huge mini major yet. So I wrote Bob back and I was like, thank you. But, just so you know, I've seen like 3 of your movies and I've spent like $3 on your stuff. So I think you can take 5 minutes, read my story.
You can read my 120 page script.
No, it wasn't even, it was just a treatment. So
it
was only like 10 pages or something like that. And so he read it.
Hold on. Let's just take a moment to understand the brashness. It was like, no, Bob Shea, let me tell you what's going to happen here.
Yeah.
I just spent $3 on your shit, man.
Yeah.
I say you sit down and read this treatment because I know what's happening. And I speak from the youthful audience. Now sit down, read my treatment.
Now that's hillbilly. That's Kentucky hillbilly for you. Like I was like, no, dude, I spent $3 on your stuff so you can read my story.
Right.
And again, you don't think about it because at that point, you're 14.
Yeah.
So it's like, you still think that movies get made by, somebody reads a script and then 5 minutes later a movie magically appears.
Right.
Like you have no bit. So I knew Bob Shea ran the company, but it's not, he wasn't Bob Shea at that point.
Right.
But he read it and he got back to me and he said, I thank you for your aggressive introduction and you're taking the time to write. And he said, you got a great imagination, but he said, you need to work on story and structure. And so he gave me some actually really good advice. And I ended up staying pen pals with Joy, his assistant, and him too. And, they would send me scripts to read and send me like little tchotchkes for movies. And
that is terrific.
Yeah.
Right on, Bob Shea.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, when I was 19, I moved to New York to study acting for the summer and Joy got me an internship at New Line. And I ended up trying to act on the side and doing a little bit here and there, but stayed on at New Line as an intern and then finally got on full time at New Line and worked there until after I sold the second Final Destination.
A cumulative 11 years.
Yep.
Wow.
And you still have good, solid feelings about it. I mean, it's not like you're like, and then I left and got the hell out of there.
No.
Like this is like your family.
No, it was, and it was, it was a wonderful company. I mean, it unfortunately, as happens a lot of times that companies get absorbed into bigger companies.
Sure.
And so they laid off like all of the New York office where I worked. So everybody I knew was gone and most of the LA office. And, New Line is still there. There's still some great people that work there, but it's just a much smaller, very small, kind of company now. So the family that I kind of grew up with, they're
dispersed.
They're dispersed. But, that was the best life experience I could ever get there. And the best people as far as work ethics go. And, this was back during like Mike DeLuca's heyday when, again, he's a film lover. Not that he's out of his heyday, but he's a film lover. And he would, push for films like Blade or The Mask or Teenage Mutant Ninja, things that most people would be like, well, we test marketed this and nobody's going to want to see an African-American vampire hunter. That's stupid. And Mike would be like, no, make this movie will make money. And Bob trusted him. And that was the kind of spirit of New Line at the time is they didn't go out, they would find, they had they do house party and they do things for different niches. But, they never, I think it's niche, not niches. I'm a writer. Me don't speak very well.
I think you're good either way.
Yeah. On our show, you're good either way.
But you know, they would take a lot of chances at New Line, and their chances would pay off in a huge way. And they were very filmmaker friendly, and it wasn't about, you know, well, let's try to hit make a 4-quadrant film here that's gonna, you know, it was about, let's just make a good movie, and let's trust our gut here. We have a great script. So that was like the best, you know, you get spoiled working at a place like that, because then when the industry changes and gets more corporate,
right,
and originality isn't as rewarded as it used to be.
Isn't that funny that the originality is what gets you the profit? The profit is what gets you absorbed, and then once you get absorbed, they suck all the originality. It's just I guess it's a way of the world in a way. That's why I think it's great that we still have the studios, but we have all these other companies out there now, and you can shoot a movie on your iPhone now, for crying out loud.
They have,
it's crazy kids.
Yeah, it's crazy.
With their 4Ks on their iPhones making the movies.
Yeah. So what about now? There you are with an internship in New York at New Line, and you're there for the summer. Please elaborate. What happened next?
I went to go to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts for the summer to study acting. So I was taking acting courses, interning at New Line part-time, and then working as a waiter, of course, at night to pay the bills. And I was staying at a YMCA. And I actually, through my acting class, I met a really nice girl, Nicole Dean Checo, and I'm probably saying her name wrong, but her mother was a casting director. I didn't know this at the time. We just ended up being friends, but her mom started giving me some extra work, on All My Children, and I was getting extra work in movies. And I was like, oh, this acting stuff is easy. And I got an agent.
Oh boy.
Well, yeah, that famous last words.
Yeah.
That 19-year-old, that's a little bit naive there. But, so I decided not to go back to school. I decided to stay in New York because I was having some success. And, but there came a point where my acting agent was like, well, I don't know what to do with you. She's like, you're kind of like an ethnic Michael J. Fox. And there's not any roles for people like you on the air. Like if you rapped or played basketball, we could definitely find work for you. But
wow,
I just don't know what to do with you. And then they canceled the Cosby Show, and I'm like, well, there's my only chance to find work in this town. That's the only place an ethnic Michael J. Fox is going to be cast. So, I decided to start really pursuing the writing, as a way to get into acting, because I'd always wanted to be in the industry. So I was like, well, if I'm not going to be able to kind of go in traditionally, I'll just write stuff for myself. Unfortunately, I write teenagers getting killed, and I kept growing up, so I wasn't a teenager anymore.
Eventually, you couldn't cast yourself.
Yeah, I'm like, I can't play jock number 1 or nerd number 3 because I'm too old. But yeah, so I decided to segue into writing, which was my second favorite thing besides acting. And I've been doing that ever since. And I've started producing now and directed a short. I'm going to be directing a feature this year. And, so it's just been an evolution. But I've started putting myself in my projects, like just bit parts here and there. Because if you're kind of born an actor, it never really goes away.
Right.
Like you can kind of bury it, but it's always there.
It's fun anyhow.
It's fun.
We
it's
want
a
to
lot
see
of fun.
in it. Yeah.
But being again 19 in New York, I had read somewhere that it takes 10 years of hard work if you're going to be an artist to start finding success in your field. And by success, they didn't mean like you're going to be rich and all this, but they just meant even just making a good living at it. Mm-hmm. And I moved to New York at 19, and I'm working background stuff and a couple lines here and there on like TV shows, and interning at New Line Cinema, and I'm like, screw that 10 years thing.
Yeah, it's a lot real fast, actually.
Yeah, but then it was literally 10 years to the year I graduated that I sold Final Destination.
See what happens?
Yeah. There is wisdom to that, because the essence of that message is you have to be willing to commit 10 years of your life to your craft.
Yeah.
And if you're not willing to do that, then you shouldn't be doing this.
And there's no substitute for hard work, because whoever the Tajik version of Michael J. Fox is, that guy's got the same problem. He's like, there's no rules for guys from Tajikistan. I've got to go out and find one.
Right.
And I might have to write my own movie, or I might have to get good at swinging a camera or whatever.
Right.
But you've got to do the work.
But then you figure out, you either give up or you figure out a way around the obstacle. And
sure.
So that's what I always tell people, because I meet a lot of people who are like, well, I'm going to give myself 2 years. If I'm not famous by then, I'm like, well, if you're doing this to be famous, then you might as well just stop right now. This is not a business that you get into to be famous. If fame is what you want, hopefully that's a byproduct of your hard work. But you have to be able to, want to do hard work and act in a lot of stuff and get rejected a lot, and, have your scripts turned down a lot.
There are just a million people in line ahead of you who don't care about that.
Yep.
And that's what you're competing with.
Yeah.
So if what you're going to do is come in here so you can be famous, it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
Everybody can see through it.
And now it's even harder because now you can become famous by flashing your tits on the internet.
Okay.
You know? So let's all do that right now.
I'm down.
Yeah.
Go to www.breakitdownshow tit flash.
Oh, it's a pay
Quick,
site.
secure that
He's over there,
URL.
like he's over there getting the domain name right now.
It's a $1 to get on.
But you know, now it's interesting because back when I was growing up, like hit shows on television had like 18 million viewers, you know, because there were only 3 like networks.
Yeah.
And now it's like, you know, a hit show will have 2 million viewers or 1.5 million because the people in it are in the news all the time, you know, and so they're more famous for being famous than for being talented. And there are some people that are talented and famous for being famous, but there's a lot more clutter and competition out there.
Sure.
So you really have to get into this business for the right reasons.
Well, a lot of people think it's easier now. You know, we've said this on the show over and over again. Now that there are several ways to get attention to yourself, there are several zillion people who have just as many ways as everyone else. So
That's exactly, yeah.
And now it used to be that there were gatekeepers who would, you know, man the door and make sure that they're letting in quality and that you had to persevere so that eventually somebody would let you in the door.
Right.
And now the doors are wide open, but everybody's trying to squeeze through them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely an interesting time because it's kind of fun seeing like the fame of celebrity where it's just, we're internet stars, but you know, then a lot of times, you know, I've seen films where they've cast like internet stars and it's had no effect on like the box office or something because people don't realize that that stuff doesn't really translate outside the world of the internet. Like if people can watch you 24/7 for free at home on their computer, like they're not going to go out and spend $13 to see you on the big screen. Like it's just,
you got 1 million views on YouTube. That doesn't make you Brad Pitt.
yeah. Yeah.
If you like the show,
And you know you do.
send us some pictures of your movies.
Don't do that. Support the show.
There are 3 ways you can support us.
Number 1, go to iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you listen to podcasts.
And leave a 5-star rating and review.
It helps with the show metrics and helps us get better placement. Number 2,
Visit our website.
www.breakitdownshow.com.
We've got an Amazon and an eBay link.
Same Amazon, same eBay, you know and love, but they give us a little kickback when you get to their site from ours. And number 3, leave comments about the shows that you like. We want to know what you think, how you feel.
Tell us how to make the show better. We greatly appreciate it.
Now back to the show.
We like boobies.
So do you think that you're in a position of advantage having done your years and being in, as Hilliard put it, in the system, making big movies? Do you think that for somebody who would try to build a career now, that the opportunity to do things yourself on the internet and post your own content allows you better creativity, allows you more expressiveness? Or do you think that the traditional route of going to school and studying and getting a job and working your way up through a studio gives you the type of opportunity that allows you greater resource?
Well, the funny thing is I went to college for theater. So I never studied writing or film. And I never took any screenwriting courses. I just read a lot of scripts and watched a lot of movies. So I definitely think education is important. Hugely important. Film schools, I'm not so sure. Like I've had a lot of friends that have spent a lot of money on film schools and they're like, we should use that money to make a movie.
Sure.
So I think the only danger, it's not even the danger is you don't need gatekeepers in a way, but I think a lot of times if you're just putting stuff online for yourself and you don't have anybody, if you're just surrounded by friends who are just like, oh, you're awesome and this is awesome, this is great, then you're not growing and you're not, you know, once you think you're great, you stop growing as an artist, not to get all hoity-toity, but so I think a lot of the people that are kind of finding internet fame, and really all they're doing is like showing videos of them taking their shirts off and doing something goofy. And, you know, yeah, they're getting paid a lot of money now by people to go to conventions and to be spokesmodels for things. But, you know, they're not really developing like a skill set as far as like, you know, what are they going to do once they get out of puberty or once they hit a certain age and
that cute thing isn't cute anymore.
That cute thing isn't cute anymore. So it's like if you want to be like, one of the awesome things that I was witness to, I'm using weird phrases today for some reason that I was witness to.
Say it in like a good Southern accent, something that I was witness to.
Well, something cool that something cool I was witness to was, no, I gave out a horror award at this, the LA Film Festival, High School Film Festival. Oh God, now I gotta get the accent out of there. No, it's like, once it starts coming out, but these were high school students and a lot of them were in Cannes. It's like, Billy can't get his award today because he's in Cannes with his short. I'm like, wow. But you saw a lot of the quality of the films and a lot of the stuff was really good. And and some of it wasn't good, but these are high school students. So they're learning and they're going to keep growing.
Man, if you're a high school student and you get accepting for Billy,
yeah,
you know,
who's got an algebra test tomorrow?
No, who's in Cannes with his short.
Right. But the funniest thing was I spent the night like watching all these films, and the one that I thought was the best, the one that won the audience award, the group of kids that made it also won like the best drama, I think. And then the audience award film, and I thought it was the best film, and so they got up there to speak, and the kids were like, yeah, well, you know, we got all of our equipment and we shot our drama film, and then we realized we had the camera for one more night, so we figured we would just write something and shoot it that night just because we had the camera. And I was like, those little effers, you know, like, because it was really, and that just shows you like when you just want to do something to create, sometimes the most original, like best stuff comes out of there, because what they shot was brilliant. Like it was a scary, creepy, short, really smart, and the idea that they just decided to shoot it in one night and come up with the idea and grab their neighbors to be in it.
It came from a place of purity.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a sweet spot that I think, you know, that's where
possible.
That's where projects come from. It's like any kind of artist, you know, whether you're a singer or writer or anything, you obviously are influenced by things that you love. Like Nightmare on Elm Street was a huge influence on me, and Wes Craven and Stephen King and Clive Barker and it, you know, the list goes on. But that's the stuff I grew up huge comic book geek. So all that stuff kind of comes out in a lot of my work. It doesn't always make it to the screen, but it just is in a lot of my work. And kind of the spirit of that stuff. So it's cool seeing like these young kids who are creating as well, but you know, it is coming, like you said, from a place of purity, because they're just like, okay, let's just make something now because we got time and let's just do it.
Yeah.
And they're not trying to like figure out like, well, what's going to sell at the box office or what's going to win us an award. You know, they shot their drama to win the award, and they did win the award for it. But the one that got the like most votes for like best short of the evening was the one that they put their passion into.
Right. Is it like
there's a lesson for us all?
Boy, no kidding, right? You put your passion into something and just let it go.
Yeah.
Is it sort of like in the music industry where you'll have a young artist that has a really catchy song and they sort of shoot out ahead, but there's nothing else there? You know, they've got ideas and concepts, but they haven't done the time to learn the craft. And so now it's like, well, what's next? Like, well, I had this short. It won a couple, you know.
Right.
Is that a similar kind of thing where they have to try to redefine themselves and they may stay in the business, but that may be their pinnacle moment, almost like a one-hit wonder?
I think that can happen, but I think, again, that's why I'm kind of really glad that I kind of got into the business the way I did. Because, again, when I was younger, I was so naive about how the business works. I literally, you just don't think about all the gatekeepers at, like, how many drafts of a script that it goes through, and how every producer that comes on will have completely have you rewrite the script sometimes, and then an investor will come in and want you to rewrite the script, and then an actor will come on and direct, and then there's that whole that process, and then there's the filming and all the post production. So a lot of times when you're younger, you're just very naive about the whole business. So I think that you have to take the time to educate yourself. But I do think sometimes, you know, if people are thrust into things too soon and they don't have a good support system, or especially family support system around them, that's where things can get really shaky. Like a lot of the students that I met at the LA Film School, like their parents were very supportive, but their parents were very much regular parents. Like, and I've met like great stage parents, and I've met awful stage parents where it's obviously like they're pushing their kid because they wanted to be famous and they weren't.
Sure.
And those are the kids that end up getting into a lot of trouble. And, you know, people that don't have that grounding at home, I think, are the ones that they can have a more hard time in this business, because, you know, the business business cares about what you do when you get to set, you know, and how much money your movie makes and what you got next for them. And then whatever else is going on in your life, nobody, you know, they don't really care about unless it affects, you know, their bottom line, unless they're friends of yours. Yeah. And I was very fortunate because I, you know, working at New Line, you know, I kind of was raised by a group of friends.
They could be gentle with you but you still got to see the growth of New Line Cinema.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no greater example where you could understand what it's like to be small and nimble and independent, and then to have the power to get movies on screens.
Yeah.
And you were there right in the thick of all of it.
Yeah. No, it was I could never, and I've met so many people, like I always kind of joke that all roads lead to New Line if you're above a certain age. Like almost every other person I meet in the business somehow either interned at New Line or there's some New Line connection, because it really was the place that everybody wanted to be back then, because it was, again, it was so artist friendly and so just about the artist, and the art of it. And, they wanted to make money, but it was like, again, let's think outside the box and let's do movies that like target certain audiences so that we can take a risk, but we're not taking a huge financial risk because we know that this audience will come see it.
Yeah. You guys did that well. Because when I think about New Line, I can picture the logo, which is really rare for a movie company to have that happen. There's others, but I picture that logo kind of flying in the bottom of the screen. And then the feeling I have is, okay, this is going to be good.
Yeah.
And I'm going to sit back in my chair. I know, like, I have faith in, certain actors, but very few studios do I have that, but I definitely have that feeling about New Line.
This is going to be great.
Yeah.
And it's got turtles.
And it's got
And they're ninjas.
There's a guy with razor blades for fingers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's, and again, the company's not dead. It's still around. It's just part of a bigger company now. And so
they built that brand on making great decisions and making an artistic choice over a financial choice.
Absolutely. Right. And they're still putting out good movies as well.
Yes.
But it's just that the wonderful family that I kind of grew up with, isn't there any longer. It's just, it was a sad day, but, Bob Shea, who's still like just a genius, is off, doing his own thing with, Michael Lynn, who was, at New Line as well. So they have their own company now. And so he's still out there. And as long as there are film lovers out there making movies, I always, when people bemoan like the state of the movie industry, it's like, as long as there are filmmakers who love film doing it, there will be something good. There'll be something good out there. Now you have to look for it more because there's so much clutter.
Right. You have to look for it more, and less and less and less of it has kid and play.
Yeah. Kid and play.
Kid and play. I know.
Together.
Well, it's funny because, that's why part of me, that's why I've moved it more into producing and directing as well, is because I've seen a lot of my films go from page to screen and completely change. And just as a horror fan, like, I know my stuff, in the genre. So, that's why I want to start having more creative control now.
Will you tell us an example, if you are contractually allowed, of one of those films where you went, I didn't really write it like that?
Well, Return to Cabin by the Lake was probably the biggest one for me. And it was a sequel to Cabin by the Lake that had Judd Nelson in it. It was a TV movie, about a writer who was looking for inspiration. So he was murdering women, and burying them in a lake or dropping their bodies in a lake. So I got hired to write the sequel and was really pumped about it. I'm like, all right, I have to write a really good story so that Judd Nelson would want to come back. So I kind of wrote the story so that they were basically making a film based on the script that he was writing and the fact that he was really killing people. And he kind of wormed his way on set. So it was a little screamish, it was kind of self-aware kind of scream story. But, I worked really hard on the treatment with the producers and wrote the first draft of the script, and they actually greenlit the first draft of the script. But that's because we worked hard on the treatment. So I'm not, and they got the director on, they got Judd Nelson on, everything's ready to go. And then I get a call from the producer that the head of USA Networks had reread the script on the plane and thought that it was too clever for their audience. So So they brought somebody in to kind of dumb down the script. So it basically still has my scenes in the order that I wrote them, but everything is just kind of completely.
The language isn't as sharp. It's not
and there's no complexity to characters. Like, like in my version, like the director was in love with one of the actresses. So the other actors were like throwing themselves at him, and he was just like, no, I'm taken. And they're like, well, he should just be sleeping with all the actresses. I'm like, but that's like the most obvious choice, So so when I watched that movie, the producer wouldn't even send me a copy of it beforehand, so that that's a good sign. She's like, I can't, Jeffrey, I just can't send it to you. So that was I had my friends like come over to watch it, and that was literally the only time like I like that the Indian in that commercial when you litter, like where a tear goes down. Like I was watching it, and that was me watching that movie because I think the director too, because if you watch the first one, it actually is fun but suspenseful and scary, and this one, the director shot it like a comedy, and I think part of it's probably because he signed on for like a scary movie, and then they rewrote it into something else,
Right.
and so now it's just
And it became dumb, so he might as well slapstick it.
yeah, and so it turned into like a slapstick movie actually, and you end up learning to love all your babies because at the end of the
Sure.
day,
Yeah.
at the end of the day,
You're not stacking boxes.
yeah,
You're making movies.
and you're making movies, and
Yeah.
you're doing what you love, and so there's a million people out there that would kill to get a movie made. So
Right.
I hate to even complain about anything about my movies that get
It
changed.
still
Yeah, no
stings,
shit.
though. Like
And
when
no,
they come
it-
in,
it does.
and
It
if
does.
there's changes, it just go with this, Jeffrey. It's going to be Judd Hirsch instead of Judd Nelson. And you're like, oh, okay,
So but the part that stings is when you write stuff and then you read reviews and all the stuff that
Yeah.
that they're raking the movie over the coals for is stuff that you didn't do, and you're like, and that's another reason why I want to direct is because I'm like, well, there's only so many times I can say that wasn't in my script before people are like, that
Yeah, that's what you
that
always
guy's
say.
just he's lying. That was in his script. He's just trying to not take the heat for it.
Yeah.
So I figured I want to direct my own stuff so that I can kind of bring my kind of vision to the screen.
And that's where you're supposed to go anyhow, right? I mean, you're supposed to evolve as an
Yeah.
artist, and you're not just going to go play background roles. You're going to take more charge. You're going to produce. You're going to write.
Yeah.
You're going to direct. You're going to do all those things.
Yeah, so it's a fun journey. I always joke that I always do things probably about 10 years a little late, you
Right.
know, which is fine.
Yeah.
but like I didn't leave New Line when I sold the first script.
Right.
Like most people would have went to LA. I stayed in New York
Yeah.
and didn't move out to LA when I sold the first script. I waited till I sold the story for the second one to finally leave New Line. Because I loved working there so much, and I'm very much a creature of habit. So I'll stay in a kind of my comfort zone for a long time before I finally am like, you know what? All right. Life's too short,
Yeah. Do you prefer New York still over LA, or 'cause I know sometimes people get a flavor of one, and then
You know what? I love growing up in New York, and I love the city. It's hard. I left because of 9/11. I lived downtown near the World Trade Center when that happened, and I was home, and it was, so I left under not the best circumstances. And so I love going back there, but when I've gone back there, it's always been like in the middle of summer where it's like sweltering hot. And so I feel like just like grumpy old man going down the sidewalks going, I can't move, too many people, I'm sweating. So, it's such a cliche, but I love the weather out here is amazing.
Yeah.
Like I just love the weather out here, in Los Angeles. And I love the pacing of it because it's busy, but it's not like overwhelmingly hustle bustle. So now I kind of like here better, but I still love New York. I mean, I spent so many years there, and it kind of molded me. Yeah, going from Kentucky to New York to LA, it's just been like such a interesting mix of places and people that made me who I am today. So
That is just about everything.
no kidding.
I mean, in terms of pace and in terms of just the amount of rat race you're dealing with and all that, that's just about everything. If New York informs what you're writing still, how long have you been in LA?
since 9/11, so I've been here 15.
Oh, you
15
really
years.
did, like right after 9/11, you said, I'm out.
Yeah, well, I tried to stay for 2 months, but we lived in Battery Park City, and our apartment building was right off the
Wow.
off the water. So they were bringing barges down and taking rubble from the World Trade Center and putting it on the 24/7.
Right.
So we had
You
earplugs
lived in the midst
and-
of it.
Yeah, so you just couldn't get away from it, and so I lasted for like 2 months, and I'm like I've got to get out of here. I can't.
So when you moved here to LA, what'd you do?
I just wrote. Yeah,
Okay.
I got an apartment. I just sold the Final Destination 2, so
You had a little time.
had a little nest egg together. So I moved out here and just started writing. I got an agent, some managers, and just started going out. The funny thing is, since I didn't come out right after Final Destination, and I wasn't out here to kind of do the tour of the town. Most people didn't know who I was, because the director and his writing partner were out here kind of taking all the meetings. And so when I moved out here, they're like, "Oh, we didn't know that you worked on it." I'm like, "My name's like story and screenplay
First?
Like,
Yeah.
it's like twice on the poster. And
Yeah.
I'm on IMDb. So I kind of had to. I almost had to reintroduce myself to the town when I moved out here. Which again is I don't regret at all. I mean, again,
It's a great
everything's
exercise,
just part
huh?
of everything's just part of a journey. So So yeah, it was kind of, it wasn't starting all over, but it was almost starting kind of as a newbie in a way.
A newbie who wrote this hit.
Yeah.
You know, like it wasn't like he came out here with nothing.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
Like, I've got this old suitcase and my dreams. Like,
Yeah.
oh, actually, I've actually
I got a
made
franchise in my
Yeah.
dreams. Yeah. So it was, you know, it was very helpful and did open up a lot of doors for me. But I was, for all the great stuff I did learn at New Line, like I was very much in a bubble there because I kind of came in at a young age and, you know, everybody knew the Bob Shea story. You know, Bob would tell it at Christmas parties. He always changed the story though. He kept saying that I harassed him and he had to like write me something. And I was like, that's not how it happened, Bob.
That's a better story though.
But yeah. So, but
Let's let that happen.
But I got kind of spoiled, you know, because
Sure.
I worked at the studio and I think maybe in my whole 11 years of working there, I maybe got yelled at like twice by somebody in an industry where people scream at everybody. There weren't a lot of screamers at New Line, but you know, just in general, you know, like, you know, people wouldn't scream at me because I was like Bob Shea's guy, you know?
Right.
So I got really spoiled and so I didn't really have to ever work the town, you know what I'm saying? And go out and network and do things like that. So I had to come out here and kind of learn that, which was a whole new game for me.
So what can you tell us about that you're working on next?
I have a project at Lionsgate Code Black, like a slasher film. That's a kind of a multicultural slasher film that I can't reveal the plot of, but we just actually this week I found out we are signing directors. I can't say who they are because I literally a half an hour before I got here.
But it is a really exciting time.
Yeah, no, like literally half an hour before I got over here, I got a call from the producer. It's like that we're signing a director, so I'm really excited about it. It's one of my favorite projects, and it's just going to be great because I haven't written a fun slasher film or had one made. So
how is it a multicultural slasher film?
You know, we intentionally wrote it so that it was a diverse cast. Like that's been a big thing for me. It's not as big of a deal now as it used to be, but even when I wrote Final Destination, I'm biracial, and I was like, look, we're in New York City, like the most diverse city in the world. Like, so let's not cast a bunch of just all white characters for the movie. And, you know, guess what they did? They cast all white people in the movie, and then they're like, oh, Tony Todd, we'll put Tony Todd in there, and a detective, a Latino detective, and there we go. I think he's Latino. So, you know, like it's all white kids, and it's like, that's not New York. So I've always tried to write diversity into my scripts, and most of the time it's not happened, you know, which is fine. It's just, you know, I specifically wanted to write a movie because I feel like, you know, the Latino and African American audiences they're huge horror fans, but they're wildly underrepresented. And, you know, it's always the running joke about how the black guy gets killed first. And even when they joke about it in movies, they'll still kill him first in the movies. And for me, it's like I wanted to write a movie that, because for me, horror fans will go out and see a good film. They just care about the story, the scares, the concept, and the characters. Like, they don't care who's in it.
Right.
It's kind of, Hollywood has this idea that you know, you have to have mostly white people or it's not going to travel. And until somebody does something to prove them wrong, they're not going to be proven wrong. And a lot of the films that have been directed towards audiences like that has been like, well, Leprechaun in the Hood, or, you know, A Vampire in Brooklyn. It's like, you know, but it's like, it's.
You just said A Leprechaun in the Hood.
No, there were two of them.
Yeah.
Leprechauns with attitude.
There were two of them.
Wow.
There were two Leprechauns in the Hood. But that's kind of been people's answers to.
I didn't even know that existed.
Oh yeah, I think it's and then he went to space after that.
Well, of course, because that's where you go next.
After the Hood, you had nowhere to go but space. But
what about the Leprechaun though? Was he a leprechaun who traveled to the Hood, or was he a character who grew up in the Hood and discovered that he was a leprechaun?
No, he was a leprechaun, and somebody from the Hood stole his gold.
See, I had a little Hood like an O'Malley guy, but he's black. You know, like, I don't know how I got this last name, but I'm a leprechaun. Damn
I'm a
it.
leprechaun.
Yeah, I just found out that I'm a leprechaun and I'm coming to terms with my racial identity by putting on this tiny green jacket.
It's a coming of age story of a black Irishman.
Leprechaun, right? He's black. And they made two of those things.
They made two because the first one did so well.
Yeah.
And that part of that is because, again, I think the audiences are so underserved that it's kind of like with gay films. Like,
they could have done anything in the Hood, leprechaun or not.
Yeah, and you would get a certain core audience there. But what I wanted to do was to make a film where the majority of the cast happened to be multicultural, just like Fast and the Furious. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
You know,
It sure did work for Fast and Furious.
it did, and it's not about that. It's just, you know, nobody's sitting around going, "Hey, look, I'm African American and I'm Latino and I'm blah blah blah." You know, it's just these are a group of friends that are diverse.
Let's find a Puerto Rican and
Yeah.
hang out with him.
Yeah,
Right. It just happened to
It
be,
just-
like you said, it was, you're describing New York. That's
it's
just
just
New
like
York.
life. It's you know, my friends or people used to joke at me, my group of friends, because it was like me, and then I had my best friend who was Italian, and I had my other friend white guy from Kentucky, and I had my Jewish friend from the Bronx, and I had my Native American friend, and I had my Asian friend. But we all hung out. We were like the UN, and we just it wasn't like we just all just hung out together. It wasn't like we planned it. You know, it's just like that's how. And so when I write, I try to, because people are just people at the end of the day. Like we all have different experiences that inform who we are, but
it's more fun, isn't it? I mean, because it's not to stereotype, but there are things that happen with responses that are based on cultural stuff. And you can say that, okay, well, you know, I didn't write this stereotypically so the Indian dude would break out into a Bollywood dance when he got scared or whatever.
Right.
Or somebody would show this brother a magic trick and he'd run around in a circle.
right.
It's although we know that happens.
Yes.
But, you know, you do start to write for, it's like now I don't have to write for these 5, you know, white characters that don't represent me and my friends or, you know, whatever. You're not limited.
Right.
And that's the thing, is that it was a limitation for what you could write or what would inform the writing.
Right.
And now we're in a day and age where much more is accepted, and you can go, yeah, sure, we'll throw in a character that does that or is from that or,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, and it really is. I think it's just about people are people. And so if you make characters relatable who happen to be of a different race or who happen to be gay, or, you know, this character happens to be a woman or this character happens to be a Christian or a Muslim or whatever, it's like, that's what
Scary
life
is still scary.
That's, that's what life is. That's what life is. Like, you know, we try it, you know, it's, you know, I don't like in this film, like there's a gay character as well. And it's like, nobody makes a big deal about it. You know, he's just like there and he just happens to be gay, you know, and it's like, I think if you try too hard to like bang people over the head with a message about something like we're trying to be diverse here, then that kind of dilutes the movie. But, you know, for this one, I just wanted to write a really strong, scary slasher film where the characters just happen to be like, you know, ethnically diverse and not all white. And we kill some white people.
Thank goodness.
So
As
just,
the
you know.
token white guy, I want to say yes.
And all miraculously were very scared when somebody came out and chased them around with an axe. Imagine that.
I know, it doesn't matter what race you are. You still get scared and run.
Yeah. And you fall down. And that one girl's going to show her titties.
Yes.
That's what always happens.
So, you know, that project I'm really excited. I mean, I'm excited about all my stuff. You know, we just finished shooting a film in Texas about sleep paralysis called Dead Awake that we just finished post on, and
That's terrifying.
it is. And it's,
I mean, I don't know what any of the plot devices are, and I don't know what any of you just said you made a film about sleep paralysis, and that terrifies me.
yes, no, it's a really good film, and it's a great, I didn't know how many people knew about sleep paralysis until I started working on this film. Cause I didn't know, I'd had it, but I didn't know what it was until I started researching this. And, so I'm really excited about that. You know,
You'd had sleep paralysis?
yeah, but not like that, just more where I would wake up and I couldn't move for a minute and I'd just be like, what the hell? And then I would finally move. But I never had the thing where I saw something sitting on my chest or felt like something evil was in the room with me. I never had any of the terrifying stuff that I've heard other people,
You're just like,
experience
man,
with
I
it.
can't reach my Slurpee right now.
I know.
That makes me sad.
My nose is itching. I can't scratch it. So that one, I'm really excited about that because I just think it's such a, almost like Final Destination. It's like, and it's got a flavor of Nightmare on Elm Street to it in a way, but it's something that again, you only die once, but you have to go to sleep every night. So it's like something that I really think it will resonate with people. And I directed a short called Good Samaritan. That's about a group of people who witness somebody being assaulted and don't help. And a video gets out of the witnesses and they start dying. And our lead character is convinced that something supernatural, like his spirit or karma or something is after them. But you don't know if it's a killer or supernatural until the very end. And, I shot a short on it and we're actually getting ready to produce a feature version of that I'll be directing. So I'm really pumped about that. Another project, a book adaptation called The Undertakers, which is a YA book by an author named Ty Drago, and it's about an alien invasion movie. It's an alien invasion movie, but the aliens are energy that use bodies of corpses as hosts, and they're able to project these masks. It's almost a little like They Live, because they project these masks so they look like normal people.
Right.
But these groups of kids, once they start hitting puberty, start getting the sight, and they can pick them out. So that aliens.
So
are
it's
trying
not that they ran across some sunglasses.
No,
Yeah.
no sunglasses. But I hope, no sunglasses. But
Rowdy Roddy Piper.
I know.
In a mood to fight.
But for me, it's exciting because it's a young adult movie, but it's not like a dystopian future, kind of like what we've seen in the other ones. It's set here and now in modern times with kids who are like can only fight with the things at their disposal, and they're dealing with a real like a terrifying kind of threat. So it's a weird, it's a kind of a Walking Dead meets They Live kind of YA movie. So that's another movie I'm really pumped about. And there's some TV projects I'm working on.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
You're a well.
Yeah, no, it's been all this stuff. It's like, you just have to keep busy because my friends are like, well, how do you stay motivated? I'm like, well, survival.
Yeah. I like to eat.
And I also don't want to, as much as I love Final Destination, like I don't want to milk that cow till I'm like 90.
Sure.
You got other things you want to tell.
I have other cows I want to milk.
Yes.
And, I want put all the cows out to pat. I'm trying to save that conversation from going in a bad direction, but I can't, so I'm just going to stop.
Yeah.
But
There's no good that's going to come of this.
I have other stories that I want to tell, and that I'm really excited about telling. But they've been things that I've been working on for a long time. So the reason I say that is because even though it feels like a lot's happening right now, these are all things that I've been working on for like years and years and years. So
right.
It takes a long time. Like Final Destination was a very fast and unique thing because I sold that to New Line in 97, and it came out in 2000. So that's in movie time. That's a very quick
Fast.
turnaround from like
that's terrific.
buying a treatment right to script phase to shooting to having a film out. And it usually takes a lot longer, and so a lot
the
of
benefit of being there in the nimble environment of New Line when you were.
Yeah. And it taught me patience, and it taught me, you just have to keep putting out work and keep writing. And sometimes you end up visiting a project, and it's 10 years after you wrote the script before somebody reads it and it's like, oh, I want to make this, so you have a stack of stuff, and you're still making new stuff. So it's, you just keep busy. That's all you can do is keep your head down and keep busy and try to work as ethically as you can and treat people well.
And make hay when the sun shines.
And make hay, yeah.
I want to ask you about your process when you write, because there's such creativity in Final Destination, with death being a character, but you never see it. The way people die. How do you, when you write, do you just sit down and does it just come out, or do you get inspired when you go to Starbucks and you see something, you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to turn that into something, and it just kind of resides in your brain until you need it, and then it comes out. How do you do it?
It's different for everybody. I know with Final Destination, I read an article on an airplane, where this woman was on vacation, and her mother called her and told her not to take the flight home. She was supposed to take home the next day, and she changed flights, and the flight that she was supposed to be on crashed. So I remember reading that story. I was actually on a plane going home to Kentucky, and that story just stuck with me. I was like, oh, that's really creepy. Like, wow, she to death. But it didn't immediately occur to me to like turn that into a movie idea.
Right.
What happened was when I wanted to get a TV agent, they always tell you to write something for something that's on television. So X-Files was like my favorite show at the time. And so I used that idea as an X-Files episode just to get an agent. I never sent it out. It's always funny when you get on Wikipedia and you read all this stuff. It's like, oh, this was a rejected X-Files script. It's like, no, I actually didn't send it to the X-Files. But one of my friends, Mark Kaufman at New Line, read the TV thing. And he's like, this is a great idea. You should write this as a feature. So then I wrote it as an outline as a feature. And originally they were all adults.
Right.
And then Kevin Williamson and I'm dear friends with him, so I love him to death. But damn him, when Scream came out, which I love, they're like, oh, we make them all teenagers. Because, teenagers became hot again. So then all of a sudden they went from being adults who didn't know each other to being a class full of teenagers, which is fine.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. But it was a process, and, like for the second movie, it was funny. We were trying to think of an opening, and was going to do a hotel fire, and the producer was just like, "Oh, it's just not, it's just not as exciting, as it could be." And I was back home in Kentucky again for the holidays, and got behind one of those log trucks. Friggin' hate those. I pulled around the log truck. I was like, "Holy shit!" And I pulled off the side of the road, and I called Craig Perry, and I'm like, "Craig, log truck on a freeway, and the chain breaks the log," and he's like, "That's it." And that's how the opening of that movie started. So that was kind of inspiration for that. But for Good Samaritan, the inspiration for that was, the Kitty Genovese story, which is, a woman in New York. And this was I'm going to screw the dates up. This was back in the 70s, I think, 60s or 70s. And it was a woman who was assaulted. And the story at the time was she was assaulted in the quad area of her apartment complex. And all these people witnessed it and nobody helped.
Right.
And they've since debunked the story because it turns out that there were some people that did call the police and the police came, but the suspect had there was just a lot of bad timing things that happened. But a reporter kind of went down to interview people and realized that he could get the most mileage out of a story about hundreds of witnesses heard this woman screaming for help and didn't help her. And that's a story that I heard. And so that story always really stuck with me about how people could not do that. And I studied up on the bystander effect and all this stuff. And, I always thought that would be the interesting starting off point for a story. So there are obviously many ways you could take it. You could turn it into like a ghost story. You could turn it into a revenge killer story. And at the end of the day, a producer that worked on it with me was like, why don't we do it where you don't know what story it is, where it feels like it's a supernatural thing, but it could be real, and you don't reveal till the end what it is. And so it was the hardest script for me to write because I couldn't kind of rely on my slasher bag of tricks or my supernatural bag of tricks because it had to be stuff that worked either way once you go back and watch the movie again. But it's probably the script that I'm most proud of because I think it's right up there with, conceptually it's up there with Final Destination, but it's what I love about the horror genre is like you can ask deeper questions than just, it's not just about killing people in movies. Yeah. Usually for me, I like to have other things going on in the movies. And for this one, you have characters that are really wrestling with like, some people had very selfish reasons for not helping this person who was getting assaulted, but, and so are they just as guilty as everybody else? And of course, the outside world, they are. Like you just watch a video of these people standing around and you're like, damn those people, how could they do that? But you get to know them and you hear their motivations and you start to hopefully sympathize with some of them. Sure. And it makes you think, hopefully, if movie's done, it's done right, people will kind of leave the theaters, thinking twice about, not helping somebody. But in the movie, they don't help and they die. And so I don't know if people are going to be like, I don't want to die, so I'm not going to help. But yeah, so that's what inspired me from that. So I do take some stuff from real life. But again, like for me, the things that I love about, like Nightmare on Elm Street, are the fantasy horror. I love supernatural kind of fantasy, and mixing, messing with reality and people's perceptions of reality. I'm working with this French company, Umidi, on a project too that kind of deals with like the dream world in a way, and it's really just that kind of stuff always excites me, like fantasy horror.
Those are the scary things when the lines are blurred, because we all feel safest when everything's clearly defined, and when you're like, wait a minute, that's kind of supernatural. That, I don't have definitions for that. That could happen. That's terrifying.
Right.
That's what made Fantasy Island kind of scary to me.
Fantasy Island's, I know, that was
it
an
was
awesome
so short. Anybody could die at any time.
Yep.
And it was supernatural. Like, how's he doing this?
Yeah.
Wait, oh my God. It was terrifying for that little 15-minute piece,
Didn't they try to remake that?
I think they did, but it just wasn't.
Yeah, it seemed like that.
I thought they
never
had remade
got
it,
off
but it
the
was like
ground.
it was going to be more of a cheesier version, because that's what I love about Fantasy Island, because sometimes they would be really scary.
Yes.
And then sometimes they wouldn't be, but it was like.
And there were no rules. Like, you didn't know
yeah.
what kind of ride you were getting on. It was just, you were going to get on a roller coaster.
Yep.
It's like,
I remember that show.
Yeah, it's like, why is this segment is so dark and it's Ruth Buzzy?
Yeah.
What's going on there?
Yeah, and Ricardo Montalban had that little bit of darkness in him.
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh, why is he doing this to people? It was a cool show.
Yeah.
I just, I had a hard time with the fact that it was called Fantasy Island and there wasn't a threesome every week.
It wasn't?
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Just an observation. It's like, hey, you can go to an island and have your fantasy. Ding! I know what I want.
Yeah, but I think threesomes were like that. Didn't that start being a thing in like the 90s? I'm kidding. Like Fantasy Island came out like when was it? I don't know what the fantasies were back then.
Well, they, they would feature sometimes the
Lander sisters.
Yeah.
They'd get off a Love Boat and go head over to
Go ahead.
Fantasy Island, and Charles would be there.
That's what I would love the most. And that's one of the things about the horror genre that I like, in that it's contained and its fans are its fans and you can do things like that. I like the cross-pollination. Like anytime that there was an opportunity to get off of the Love Boat because it docked at Fantasy Island, I love this concept that we can do things in the horror genre because it's more like it belongs to the community.
Yeah.
And you can do things that mess with people, and then somebody takes it another step and you can kind of borrow what scared you from something else and expand on it. What about this? I hear there's this movie there that somebody's trying to make that is employing all of like Robert Englund's in it and everybody who played a villain. Not that they get to license their character, but somebody's trying to sell this film on, hey, we've got all of the actors that played all of the classic.
Untouchables or the
and that's how they're billing it.
Expendables of horror.
Yeah, I heard about that. Well, I know there's and I think one maybe shot already, but they're doing one kind of version of that with Scream Queens as well, where they're trying to, bring in all these final girls together for a movie. And I always think that's cool. It's just, I want to see how they utilize them, that's,
And who gets to be the final? Who's the champion of the
like
final
when you have all
girls?
the final girls together.
Which
but
one ends up in the shower? That one's always happened too.
Wow, man. Well, we're excited for you and we appreciate you being on our show. And
thanks
we've
for having me.
had you for an hour and can we get an update? Can we do it again?
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, you only get 1 hour.
That's it.
I'm like a high priced hooker. You only get 1 hour with me, and that's all. Well, no,
hang
that
on
doesn't
a
make.
second here.
I got to think of another. That's why
It's always a good day
That's
when
why I don't
people
write comedy.
You and your
that's why I
cows
do
and your
not.
high-priced hookers.
Me and my milking the cows and the hookers. It's like That's why I don't do comedy.
It's a day in the life at Pete's house.
But no, absolutely would love to come back on the show.
Hey, you know what? You just passed up Florence Henderson as my favorite Kentuckian.
Surprise.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
There you are. So now, but you've climbed up the ladder and you are our show's favorite Kentuckian.
Yes.
Yay!
If we get Johnny Depp on the show.
Next I must be your favorite in the world. So
Uh-oh. If we get Johnny Depp on the show, you might be in trouble. He might just break out into some crazy profundity and we'll go, wow, that was really heavy.
So
you might
much for
have just
Jeffrey.
passed up
yeah,
that.
screw Reddick.
Thank you, man.
All right, thank you guys.
All right.